Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Brian Archer, and as always, we'd encourage you to get onto the Gersnet website and check out our forums for all your latest Rangers news and discussion. We're live tonight on the YouTube channel and we'd ask that you continue to share the pod on social media, spread the word, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before I introduce my guest for tonight, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the podcast. If you want more information about them, please visit their website over at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand. And for more information on that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guest, joining me tonight is Alan Rogers. Alan, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi Brian. It's well, the good news is it's Friday night. The bad news is Rangers are playing again in 48 hours to depress us all again. But no, we've had better weeks, haven't we?
Yeah, we have indeed. Unfortunately, before we talk about the upcoming game, we need to start by looking over what was, I think a horror show is probably the right word to describe it last night. Obviously, really disappointing 4-1 defeat to Lyon. First thing I guess I'll get your take on is the team lineup. Not really too much to say on this, to be honest. It's probably the team most people would have picked. Was there any surprises in it for you?
Not particularly, really. I mean, the only real issue is whether Casemiro would keep his place. But, Jeffy's been doing okay, and I wasn't really surprised to see him come back in. We will get to it in terms of the side, but I won't lie, when I saw that we were going with the typical 4-2-3-1 against a team of Lyon's quality with their attacking prowess, I was concerned. It's just yearn for the days where Advocat might, suddenly two guys at sweeper in a difficult game, or McInnes is in as a man marker in a difficult game. That kind of, I've looked at this team, I've studied them, I've decided we need to adapt to counter a specific threat. Back those days just seem to be gone now, and it's just the same side, the same system, playing the same way, no matter who the opponent is. And last night although I wasn't surprised with the starting lineup, I did have an uneasy feeling when I saw it.
Yeah, the manager does seem kind of wedded to that formation and system. To be honest, I felt we started the game pretty brightly in the opening 5 to 10 minutes. Tavernier and Czerny both having chances. To be honest, both should have scored. Czerny in particular is a gilt-edge chance, pretty much missing an open goal, to be honest. Was that kind of a microcosm of our season so far, in that we're just failing to take our chances yet again?
I mean, I think so. I think you're doing Czerny a huge favour there by saying it's pretty much an open goal. It is an open goal. There's no question about it. The keeper's out the game. He's sprawling. He's on the deck. He can just tap that in. He can just roll it. But he tries to go with his stronger, his preferred left foot. He tries to wallop it and just gets it so wrong. And you're right. At European level, chances are harder to come by. So when you've got a glaring open goal like that, you have to take that chance. And goals change games. Although Lyon were an excellent side, and I'm not suggesting for a second if Rangers had gone up in the first 5 minutes would have hung on, it would have given Lyon something to think about. It would have got the crowd behind the team. It would have given us confidence. Whereas when you miss it, the polar opposite happens. You could almost see the life come out the team and the crowd after that happened. And you compare it to the Malmo away game. Again, we started really well. We scored early. That gave us a lift, and that set the tempo for the whole game. And the team responded to it. But from last night, you could see that the team's heads went down as soon as Czerny missed that, because it's almost like we knew that was our big chance, and this team are now going to come into it. I think it's just something that we've seen before, especially in big games. When you think back to Parkhead, starting well, even Kiev at Hampden, starting the game well, not capitalising, and then just kind of running out of steam. 15, 20 minutes in, you just drop out the game. And when you see the quality in the Lyon lineup, dropping out the game against a side like that is always going to be bad news.
Yeah, I guess for me it was kind of the perfect example of the difference when you get to this level in terms of European football. You know, we failed to take, you know, a really gift of a chance, and then they pretty much go up the other end of the park, and within a minute they're one up. You know, we don't take our chances, and at this level, you're always going to get punished, and that's something this team are going to need to learn very quickly.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, you just look at the goals, you look at the difference. Czerny misses an open goal with a keeper out of the equation, whereas their first goal, it's an absolute screamer of a finish right into the bottom corner. You know, curls from outside the post in. I mean, it's a brilliant finish, and that's the difference. That's the level above. You know, just being able to finish with that aplomb, with that confidence, and with that accuracy. That's what dictates games. Now, the build-up to the first goal was a shambles in itself. You know, again, players just getting brushed off the ball. Defending was really, really powder puff. But ultimately, the guy, I think it was Fofana, wasn't it? He still needs to finish it. And he finishes it expertly. And you can have no complaints about that. That's the level you're playing at. It's the level you've got to aspire to get to. But it just sums it up that we can't score into an open net and they can find the bottom corner from 20 yards. And that just set the tone.
Yeah, definitely. We also mentioned Czerny quite a lot there, but aside from the miss, in recent games, he just looks a player completely lacking in any confidence. Does there need to be now a conversation around his place in the team and whether he needs a spell out of the side almost for his own good as much as anything?
Yeah. I mean, he definitely needs a spell out the side. Primarily, I would say just because he's not justifying his place, you know, first and foremost. We've got to remember he's not our player, and we have a recent history of bringing in loan players that are in the doldrums a little bit. Beale liked it, you know, bringing in guys whose careers have faltered and we can get them back up. It just doesn't work. And Czerny's a bit like that as well. He got his big move to Wolfsburg, hasn't worked out, barely played, been injured, comes to Rangers. You know, I'm not sure what the logic was in the signing. Okay, technically he's reasonably proficient, but in terms of the mentality, in terms of the pressure, in terms of having a 38-game league that the fans basically expected to win, 35 of them? There was no real signs that he's going to be able to bring himself up to that level. And I think we're starting to see that. He's now realising the pressure that's here, and he doesn't really seem to be able to cope with it, given that he's now biting back at fans and making really, really basic errors. You could almost forgive him for the Malmo miss. We've seen lots of better players than Václav Czerny having too much time to think about a finish and getting it all wrong. That does happen. And of course, the keeper was there and he tries to bend it around the keeper and gets it wrong. Okay, fine. But that miss last night, you know, he's leaning back. He goes with the wrong foot to try and make it easier for himself. And he just completely blows it. And it's those fine margins. Those fine margins cost you points. They cost managers their jobs at points. You know, you have to take advantage when you get to that stage. And he's now looking like somebody that we just can't rely on, unfortunately. But again, these kind of loans to plug gaps. You know, Rangers don't have a great history with loans in recent seasons. Either they don't work out or they do work out and we still don't manage to sign them. So it's really frustrating. But to answer your question, I definitely would not play Czerny on Sunday. I think he just needs a time to go away and just get his head straight and try and regain a wee bit of form. But it doesn't look like a signing that at the moment that's going to work out.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I completely forgot about the Malmo miss until you just mentioned it there. I'd kind of, completely written that one out of my memory, to be honest. But you've kind of touched on it there, but I guess this is kind of the problem when you rely on a loan player as one of your key signings, that they don't get the time to bed in, because if you're a loan player and there's no chance of us signing you permanently, you really need to come in and hit the ground running. And if you don't, then you quickly become a wasted signing.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So there comes a point, or there will come a point, unless Czerny's form drastically improves, there's going to come a point where you have to say, well, what's the point in playing him over McCausland? You may as well play McCausland. At least he's your own player and you give him experience and hopefully he'll improve. Whereas if you don't, then Czerny's just taking his place. But it's this kind of frustrating habit that Rangers have. Guys like Sima and Tillman in recent seasons, guys that came in and straight away contributed and we thought they're really good and we'd like to sign them permanently. We don't get them. And then there's a big gap left and we're trying to replace quality. And that's what worries me about the likes of Casemiro. I mean, everyone thinks, you know, he's looking promising. You know, you're bringing in a loan signing from Feyenoord reserves to replace your captain. I mean, that kind of speaks to the Rangers recruitment policy at the moment. It's a shambles. But if Casemiro does replace Tav in the team, which he might well do from here, then great. But if he performs and hits the heights, Do we have an option to buy? Do we have an obligation to buy? Do we have an agreed fee? Or is it going to be another sort of summer chase, trying to plug gaps again for a guy that we've loaned in and now can't afford or can't obtain? So it's just that kind of joined up thinking we need to try and address. But Czerny as a loan signing might have been worth the gamble. Don't know what the finances are like involved, but it was always going to be a big ask, I think, for him to come in and hit the ground running and be a first choice 11 player, which someone at his level really should be. But as it stands at the moment, the jury's very much out on him.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange strategy, and I kind of want to touch on our approach to playing our own academy players a bit later, but we'll come on to that a bit later. But we do manage to grab an equaliser, and I know it's, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really lead anywhere, unfortunately. But it was good work from Tom Lawrence to put the ball away, and I kind of wanted to touch on Lawrence specifically because he was a player that in the summer I think most fans wouldn't have been shedding any tears to see him leave. But to be honest, he's been one of our key players at the start of the season so far, and is he now starting to prove his doubters wrong?
He's certainly contributing, and I think of all the players in the squad so far, he's one that can say, well, I'm having a reasonably good season, this doesn't fall on me, and I think that's right. As I said, I think in the pod last week, Lawrence in and around the opposition box has never been the problem. He's always been able to contribute, he's always been able to score and look dangerous at points. His issue is he just can't operate in this setup. I know that sounds maybe a wee bit weird because he's scoring goals, but he completely falls out of games because he doesn't have the legs. And you've got Barron and Diamandi behind him, usually having to do a power of running to make up for his lack of mobility. And that's an issue, that's a structural issue. I know we're going to come to that. But Lawrence just kind of sums up last night. He comes in, does well, scores the goal, injures himself off at half-time. Lawrence's career at Rangers has always been defined by injury. And now again, thinking of transfer strategy, we're in this odd situation that Lawrence is in the last year of his contract. So it's sod's law that now is the time he's playing and is actually contributing. And we're going to have to make a decision as to whether we renew his contract or not. Otherwise, we're going to lose him. And then again this summer, if we don't keep him on, it's another gap in the squad that we're going to have to fill. And you're just sort of blundering from one disaster to the next. So we don't know if Lawrence is still fit, but he deserves a spot in the team at the moment because you have to say that he is contributing.
Yeah, he definitely is. Now, it didn't take Lyon long to get their second goal. It was really poor play from Barron. I'm kind of loath to criticise him too much because he has been a kind of rare bright spark this season so far. But was this just an example of an inexperienced player that we're kind of watching having to learn to play at this level?
I'd say it's a bit of both. We were in the situation, and I sat right in front of the club deck, so I could see it, and the whole stadium could see it. As he shaped to make that pass, you heard the crowd go, "Oh!" because they saw it coming.
Yeah.
And crucially, Fofana saw it coming as well, because he's already moving towards the space because he can see that's where Barron's going to put it. It's just naive. He is a young player. Caveat that with saying he's 22. He's not 18. The boy that picked it up is 19, Fofana. So, you've got to say, if you're going to be at Rangers, then we expect you to operate at a certain level. But Barron has had a decent enough season. Whether he's ready for games against the standard of Lyon, I have my doubts. Remember back to Parkhead, their second and third goals came as a result of Barron giving the ball away. The second one in particular was a really ambitious pass to Czerny, who was on his heels. They picked it up, one pass through, a little bit similar to last night. So he's got to sort of sort his passing out a bit and stop playing the low percentage balls. I think it was on the pod last week, or maybe the week before, when I mentioned, when Rab was hosting, I think it was, about this habit the Rangers players do have of these nonsense passes into the middle of the park. I remember when Clement first came in, he gave a press interview and he talked about shit lateral passes. And everyone thought, oh, he's seen it, because we keep doing it. And that was another example from Barron last night of a shit lateral pass. It's just too loose. And it is, again, I think there's a structural issue there. Because if you actually see where everybody is when Barron's got the ball, he's got no option. He's trying to play it back to proper, but gets it wrong. But Suter's already pushed over. The fullbacks are crazy high and wide. Diamandi's pushed right on. And it's one of those scenarios where if you give the ball away, they're straight through and goal. And that's exactly what happened. And okay, after Fofana picks up the ball, he drives with it. the attempt at defending from everybody apart from Barron was pretty poor. You know, Barron, to be fair to him, tries manfully to get back. He knows it's his error. He's trying to atone for it. And he goes over to try and block it. Suter, you could maybe say Suter does okay initially to try and push him wide. But if you actually see what Fofana turns back inside, I mean, Suter's yards away from him. You know, he pushes him wide, then lets him turn in. And then at that point, Proper is just bombed right over. You know, completely ignorant of Lacazette, who's standing totally unmarked. I just can't fathom the thinking. We had it at Parkhead with Proper as well. God, I hate to keep harking back to that game, but it's true that, you know, Kyogo was running through and Proper's running back away from him. And, you know, I get that if you engage him and you dive in, he might get by you, blah, 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 but that's surely better than just running away and having no impact on him whatsoever. You know, it's just that the decision making in split seconds has been so sorely lacking. I will caveat this all by saying, although it was in the bottom corner, I thought Lacazette did get a wee bit fortunate, because if you look back on the replay, he sclaffs it a little bit and it bobbles, and Proper's throwing himself, and he probably would have blocked it if it didn't take a bit of a bobble. But that's just the kind of luck Rangers have these days. You know, nothing seems to be going for us. But for Barron, again, in these bigger games, thinking Parkhead, thinking Dynamo Kiev, Lyon, he's maybe just needing to have a wee sit out the team, maybe, just to protect him more than anything else, because he's got great promise, he's got great engine, he covers every blade of grass, but I think he's suffering in the system a wee bit, and that's not what you like to see.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of alluded to structural issues there. Now, I'm not going to go over the third and fourth goals individually because I don't think anybody wants that. But for me, all of the goals we conceded exposed huge structural issues within the team. We're far too open in midfield. We're too easy to play against. There was times when Lyon had the ball and Barron and Diamandi are literally standing right next to each other, but neither of them are covering the space in midfield, which is just completely vacant. And we've seen this in previous games in Europe, the Dynamo Kiev game earlier in this season and the Celtic game as well. How does the manager rectify this? Is it a player problem or is it a tactical problem? Is it a bit of both?
I'd primarily say it's a tactical problem. I really would, because you can't fault the likes of Diamandi and Barron for work rate. They do work and they chase everything, but the effect of that is, as you say, gaps are enormous. And we've got this, it's a pattern now. You know, you've got Dynamo Kiev, you've got Parkhead, you've now got Lyon. If we lose the ball in midfield, one pass and the opposition's straight through. You know, there's no number 6 sitting there dictating the play. You know, the other midfielders should really have a 6 behind them, so they position themselves in accordance to the 6, and it's a clear, defined structure. I don't think I've done one of these podcasts yet where I haven't mentioned Davis, Kamara, Jack. You know, that was that perfect trio where they all knew their roles, they all knew their positions and their distances and where they need to be. And that was a nice, solid midfield. Each of them were capable of holding on to the ball as well. Whereas now we've completely lost that. You know, a 2-man midfield in that kind of, in a lot of games, but especially in that kind of game, is complete and utter madness. And I can't decide if it's the manager just being stubborn, is he being arrogant, or has he just lost his mind and can't see it? I don't know. But again, harking back to the Parkhead game, we saw the lineup and with Sterling and with Diamandi and with Barron. That was the midfield we all wanted. And we all presumed that would be a flat 3. You know, we all presumed Sterling would be there covering for Tav and all the rest of it, but it wasn't. You know, Diamandi was playing up advanced in the 10 again. And lo and behold, you know, to the surprise of nobody, we get completely overrun and lost goals because we lost it in midfield and bang, one pass and they're in. You know, I can't understand how a professional football manager can't see that glaring problem. And I've said before, you know, the number 10 role, we don't need it. We just don't need it in most games. We'd far rather be solid and calm and collected in midfield and know what we're doing than try and have this number 10 shoehorned in as some kind of maverick. Now, again, Tom Lawrence has contributed well enough, but it's not worth the opportunity cost of being loose at the back. It's just not. Because, you know, we've seen already this season, Motherwell got clean through and goal, Ross County have got clean through and goal, Hibs have got clean through and goal. You know, it's happening every week. We're fortunate some teams don't have the quality to take advantage of it, but Lyon just ruthlessly exploited it. Can you imagine what Son and Kulishevsky and guys like that are going to do to us in a couple of months? That is going to be absolutely horror show viewing. It really will be. And, you know, I hate saying it, But if you're giving those guys free rein right in front of your box, floating around the D area, they're going to absolutely pummel you. And it's imperative that Clement adjusts the system, whether it's 3-5-2 or whatever it may be. He cannot go with this ridiculous two-man midfield that's getting overrun by really poor to average players and getting absolutely mutilated by top drawer players like Lyon had.
Yeah, something definitely needs to change for those upcoming fixtures you mentioned, but concerningly, the manager hasn't really shown many signs of wanting to make those kind of big tactical changes. He seems quite wedded to this system and this way of playing.
And that's what I find interesting, because a lot of managers and a lot of pundits say, well, you're not a football, you're just a football fan, what do you know? But, the fans do watch a lot of football and they know their own team and they know their own squad. We can see what the problem is. And a lot of the time, when you see the lineup, you think, well, this is going to be a problem. And it is. And we need something to cling to. We need to be able to see what this manager's trying to achieve with this squad. Because if we can see that, we'll get behind it. We recognise it's a rebuild and it's going to be painful moments and it's going to be inconsistent performances. That's okay in a season like this. But we need to see what the foundations are. And at the moment, there are no foundations. The squad's worse than it was last season. I think they're probably playing worse than they were last season. And the disconnect with the fans, I think, is worse than it was last season. So I'm just not sure what the direction of travel is supposed to be. And we've got important games coming up. We've got Cup semi-final coming up. We've got Pittodrie now looming, which is suddenly feeling like an absolutely season-defining game. And are we really going to go back up to Pittodrie playing a 4-2-3-1? Is that seriously what we're going to do? I mean, let's hope not.
I wouldn't bet against it at this point.
No, I'd bet on it, let's be honest. If there's money to be made, that's what it is. But
yeah. But yeah, it's concerning, to be honest. I think too often fans' opinions are kind of brushed aside by managers and pundits, as you say, we're just football fans, but you don't have to have been on a UEFA A licensed coaching course to see the problems that are apparent with the team at the minute. And
yeah, but that's exactly it. I'm watching the press conference with Clement after the last night's game. I was actually a bit dismayed. I think it was Stevie Clifford that asked a question about the system, and the manager was almost dismissive of it. He's kind of, well, maybe we could do that, but you forget the way, clean sheet against Dundee. You're sort of going, for what? It's kind of, whether he likes it or not, Rangers fans since Gerrard came in have got used to punching above their weight in Europe. Nobody's expecting us to beat Lyon. Nobody's saying we should be beating them. Absolutely not. The defeat is not the problem, but it's the manner of the defeat, and it's basically turning up and getting your arse scalped when everybody could see that coming. Everybody could see it coming. And, I know we're going to come on to players, but you've got players in there who have certain vulnerabilities and certain weaknesses and are going to be targeted. And then you say, right, the manager, right, what are you going to do about that then? Because if we know it, the opposition will know it as well. And the manager just does nothing about it. He sticks to the system, doesn't change anything, and lo and behold, those vulnerabilities come to the fore and cost us goals. And that's just not acceptable. It's just not.
Yeah, and you mentioned these post-match comments last night. It's not the first time that I've been really concerned by what he's had to say post-match. I can't remember last season if it was the Ross County or the Dundee games. It was one of the two where he made some bizarre post-match comments about how he was kind of reasonably happy with what he saw when nobody else seemed to be. And again, against Celtic this season, when he kind of made the bizarre comments around, oh, well, we just beat Ross County 6-0, and oh, well, if you look at the stats, it wasn't really that bad. And it's kind of getting into the realms of the managers trying to tell you that the game you've just watched isn't the game that you've just watched. And for me, when a manager gets into that territory, it kind of usually only ends one way. I'm not out there shouting for the manager to be sacked at the minute. I have my doubts, and I think we're all kind of on the fence a little bit. But yeah, the post-match comments just don't help his case at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's it's one of those things that as soon as a manager starts pulling out XG after a bad result, the writing's on the wall. He's struggling to justify it. And XG, I get XG. Probably people in the comments are watching spitting blood. I'm being dismissive of it. I'm not really. I know XG has a certain value, but if you're trying to explain away a performance by saying, well, the XG was decent, or we had the same attempts at goal and all this kind of stuff, it just misses the point. The whole point is. We didn't make it difficult enough for Lyon. We just didn't. If you're going to lose a game to a better team, that's fine. But you need to give a good account of yourself. And Rangers did not give a good account of themselves last night.
Yeah, definitely not. Kind of go back to the game for a minute. The half time, we were obviously went in 3-1 down. Now, manager makes a sub at half time. I think he has to bring off Lawrence due to an injury, and he brings on Kieran Dowell. Now, the thing that bothered me most about this sub was that at that stage in the match, was it not an opportunity to give somebody like Zach Lovelace, who was on the bench, a chance? We all know what Dowell is and isn't capable of. We're not going to learn anything by putting him in at that point in the game, and to be honest, he was completely ineffectual. If there's nobody in the academy who can offer more in that situation, then what's the point in having one?
Yeah, I mean, the manager just needs to decide what he wants to do. If he's going to start relying on academy players, fine. I mean, a specific example from last night with Lovelace, I don't know if I'd put Lovelace on, mind you. At 3-1, the game is still there. Just, if you get the next goal, 3-2, then you've got something to play for. I think my concern, rather than Lovelace, was not bringing on, presumably Raskin. I thought we would bring on Raskin and shore up the midfield because we were just getting barred in midfield. And to bring on Dowell for a like-for-like replacement for Lawrence. Again, Lawrence maybe isn't the best player in the squad, but Dowell's a good level or two below Lawrence. So it weakened us. And as you say, Dowell didn't really contribute. Doesn't look up to this level at all. That shouldn't be a surprise. He's a Bosman from Norwich. I mean, what are we expecting? But I was surprised the manager didn't bring on Raskin to shore up the midfield, because it must have been obvious that's where we're losing it. It's just you're watching it, and you're watching the Lyon players. They bring the ball out, they pass up to a midfielder who drops back with his back to goal, takes it in, and by this point he takes it in. The guy's passed it to him, he's moved into space, he lays it off to the man in space, and he runs up. It's basic football. It's just knowing where your teammates are going to be. It's playing in the wee triangles. It's moving the ball at speed. It's not rocket science. But Rangers looked at it and said, well, Christ, what is this voodoo? How do we tackle this? We don't know. And I'm not saying we expect Rangers to play like that because we don't have the level of player, but they must know how to deal with that kind of basic pass and move. And the number of times Lyon just did that, and they were just in acres of space, just running away from our players straight up towards the box. It was really alarming. So if the manager looks at that at half-time and thinks the solution is Kieran Dowell, then I think there's a lot of questions to ask about that decision.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, no harm to Dowell, but he's not really at the level required for SPFL games, never mind, Europa League. If we're being brutally honest about it, I think that's the honest truth, and I don't know what the manager's seeing from him in training. I just think in scenarios like that and the 6-0 win against Ross County, when you're 6-0 up, if you're going to have an academy and you're going to say that we want to give youth a chance, then let's at least try and give them a chance over players that, to be brutally honest, we would have probably been happy to sell Kieran Dowell in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very certain that we were trying to get rid of Kieran Dowell in the summer. But I'm certainly sure that we offered him a loan and there was some interest, but nobody would match his wage. So to now be relying on him in a kind of crucial game and things like that, Dessers didn't have a good game last night. Again, he worked hard enough, I suppose, but by 60 minutes he was burst. Surely you can bring on a good man. Just give him a bit of experience. He's got enthusiasm. He's got a bit of beef about him. Maybe he can muscle someone off the ball. Who knows? But what's the point in keeping Dessers on for the whole match when you've got a good man sitting there? Might even give the crowd a lift. Give us something new. Give Lyon something else to worry about. Because at points Lyon's defence looked a bit disorganised. Their centre halves completely dominated Dessers. They're easy. They're big, tall guys, broad shoulders. They just pushed him off the ball. Really, if we're honest. But there was certain structural issues, I think, with the Lyon defences, capitalise on that. And then after, as soon as it went 4-1, the game's done, dusted. What's the harm in, as you say, whether it's Lovelace or Cole McKinnon or Igaman, whoever it may be, what's the harm in bringing these guys on? They can't do any worse than some of the senior pros did last night. But again, it harks back to, well, what is this manager's plan? What's he trying to achieve? What's the long-term target? Because at the moment, it seems like we're just flicking shit at the wall, hoping something sticks. And at the moment, absolutely nothing is sticking, and it's all sliding down the wall into a big shitty puddle.
Yeah, definitely. I just think if we're saying that this season's a kind of a rebuild, then I think that we're almost kind of entitled to ask that we try and give some of our youngsters a chance and try and at least kind of give the impression that we're a club that can bring through young players, and if you're a young talented Scottish player at the minute, why would you go to Rangers when you're more than likely to sit on the bench and kind of decline? Look at Bailey Rice. When he came to us, he was rated higher than Lennon Miller, but Lennon Miller's now went on and established himself in Motherwell's first team, and Bailey Rice can't get on a bench most weeks. But that's maybe a point for another day. But it was just something that kind of irked me about last night, when there was maybe a chance to, as you say, when the game's gone, bring on a youngster for a bit of experience, and we don't take it. It just, it kind of annoyed me, to be honest. But another substitution that raised a few eyebrows was the manager's decision to substitute Tavernier on 60 minutes. Now, there was a few people suggesting that maybe he was trying to make a bit of a statement with this substitution, but for you, was that him just protecting his captain with Sunday in mind?
I mean, it's difficult to know what his thinking was, really. It was not long after the fourth goal. And okay, we don't want to analyse every goal individually, but the fourth goal was a collective failure. There was numerous points. There are with most goals, numerous points of failure. But, Yefty's not good at left back. Barron's not good in the box. Proper goes over and gets skinned at the same time as Barron, which was dreadful. The ball gets drilled in. Again, annoyingly, Butland's at the near post, but doesn't react, even though that must be the ball that he's expected. And then Tavernier's on his toes at the back post. The guy's for a tap-in, which we've seen before. And manager hauled him off pretty soon after that. So I can understand the perception of, well, he's done it again, let's get him off the pitch. I don't think it would be that from Cologne. I think he was a case of, well, Casemiro played well in Malmo last week, let's give him some time. And I thought he shored up the defence. Again, it's difficult because the game's gone by that point and Lyon dropped a gear and took players off and everything else. But Casemiro's looked relatively decent at the back. He's big, he's strong, and he's quick, and he's athletic, which is something our backline really lacks. So he does stand out. So I think it was just the case the manager just giving him some time. I fully expect Casemiro to start on Sunday night, and I hope he does, because it harks back to what we were saying earlier on about players' vulnerabilities. If everyone can see Tav's lost pace and he's not playing with confidence at the moment, I think his poor performances are a wee bit over-egged. I don't think he's been as bad as some people would have you believe, and I still think he can contribute moving forward. But if the manager's going to make a decision that Tavernier's going to continue to play, that's fine. What he absolutely cannot do is continue to play in the 4-2-3-1, because he's just getting minced by basic players. 19-year-old Fofana against 33-year-old James Tav. I mean, how do you think that's going to end? This isn't rocket science. So if that's how he's going to go, he needs to adapt his team and say, right, we're going to work with this player that's important going forward. He's still important going forward, but we cannot just leave him marooned at the back. So whether that's a move to 3-5-2, a 3-5-2 with Casemiro the right side, the centre halves, and Tav in front of him, I think could work. Casemiro provide good cover. You get Tav closer to the midfields. Maybe you get Barron in there as well. That for me might work, certainly in tougher games. But what you can't do is just keep playing this system that isn't working. And we've seen it in pre-season. Just the balls is so easy to get through onto our defence. And we've got so many examples of it, and there's just no reaction at all. So much like Barron, I think, is suffering in this system, I think Tavernier is as well. As much as he's on the decline, and as much as we should be thinking, right, who's our right back moving forward, whether it's Sterling or Casemiro or whoever it may be, we're not helping a good number of the players by putting them into this system, and including the centre halves in that, because there's no defensive midfielder in front of them, and they don't look capable of defending the box without that additional shield. But to answer your question, I don't think the manager was trying to suggest anything by taking Tavernier off. The game was done. Let him rest his legs a little bit, get a few minutes in for Casemiro, because I presume he's starting on Sunday night, and I don't think it'll be anything more than that. But it'll be a really, really horrible experience if Tavernier continues to play right back in this 4-2-3-1, because he's been a brilliant servant for Rangers, been a huge contributor, and he's put himself on the line more than once for the club, and he deserves respect for that. And the last thing you want is to see his Rangers career peter out with grumbles from the stands and things like that. It's not fair on him, and that's not what we want. So the manager needs to make a call on it as to how he actually sees this team going forward, and who he wants to be starting right back, and how he wants to deploy them and in what system. Because at the moment, it's a shambles from top to bottom.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, when you get to October and you're still talking about issues that you saw in pre-season still happening, that's when you kind of know you've got problems, to be
Yeah.
honest.
But again, Brian, I think that harks into the manager's perspective on it. He doesn't seem to realise that there's a problem. Now, I get he can't throw the players under the bus. And I get managers don't really want to sit in press conferences and go, yeah, I should have done that differently. But, he's got to recognise that we can all see what the issues are.
Yeah.
He's got to do that. And it's not just a case of we'll keep working to be better. If there's a structural problem in the team, that's going to persist until it's solved. And now you've got the likes of Ross County and Motherwell looking at it and to ruthlessly exploit it. So you can't just fail to look in the mirror and see what the problems that are staring you in the face. It's like that Principal Skinner meme. Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children that are wrong. No, you're wrong. This isn't working, and you need to do something to change it, because otherwise it's going to get nasty quickly.
Yeah, this is where the manager's kind of got to earn his calling, but we'll see what happens over the coming games. Before we touch on the weekend's game, it was announced during the week that Yanis Hadji's contract standoff has been resolved and he's now available for the first team again. Was this the best resolution for both parties? Do you think there's a realistic chance of Hadji having an impact this season?
2 points, really. I think the best resolution for both parties would be for Hadji to move on this summer. It was clear that's what both parties wanted, and he wasn't able to secure a move. Given the situation we found ourselves in, yes, I think this is the best temporary solution. You're paying him, a senior player's salary. He's doing well in the B team, but the B team is just a waste of time for everybody, really. So you're paying him, get him in the squad, and get him contributing, because we don't have a good enough squad to leave players out. For me, Hadji's got some credit in the bank. He was a really positive contributor during the season with 155, and he scored goals in Europe for us, and he's got assists in Europe for us. He's a decent player. I think he's always suffered from a lack of pace, and that he had a really, really bad injury, and I'm not sure he's really ever recovered fully from that. It certainly won't help his pace issues. I do wonder if we could maybe play him a wee bit deeper, a wee bit more central, to try and help the midfield, because he's got good touch, he's got good technical skills, he's got decent awareness, and you wonder if we could adapt it a wee bit and find a role for him, because the fans like him as well. And if he comes on Sunday, he'll get a really rousing reception from the fans, and he'll deserve that because he's been a good contributor for Rangers. But that having been said, I'd still fully expect that we try and move him in January, or in the summer at the latest. I still think we'll try and shift him. I don't think Clement rates him, and I think if he did, he would have said in the summer, whatever, just honour his contract and get him in the team. I want to see him play, and he didn't do that. So I think that probably speaks volumes. I should add, I really, really dislike that Rangers wouldn't honour his contract, or didn't want to honour his contract. I just think that reflects really poorly in the club. The people were some fans are sort of criticising Hadji for it, but why? He signed the contract. When he gets to 100 games, these fees are payable. Rangers just turn around and go, no, we're putting your career in the skids because we're not willing to pay. I just think that reflects really badly in the club. I understand why they did it, of course I do, but it's just not a good look. It's just not a good look to get a reputation as a club that would do that.
Yeah.
So fair play to Hadji and his agent, no doubt, for waiving certain contractual entitlements, so that he can get his career back on track. But I would hope to see him a few times between now and January. But also, I would expect that once he's up to speed and once we get a reasonable offer, Rangers will be very keen to offload him still.
Yeah, I think so. On the match on Sunday then, St Johnstone come to Ibrox. Their first point to touch on in this game is actually, for me, about the kick-off time. An 8 p.m. kick-off for a league match at Ibrox, where any fans who rely on subway transport might not be able to attend. Is this just yet another example of those at the top of the game and those in charge of, TV and whatnot, just putting match-going fans last?
Yeah, I think it is. I think we have to caveat that with, because of the run that's on, road closures and things like that. It's a bit of a can't win situation, probably, if you're going to have the game on the Sunday, which it needs to be because of the European participation. You're either having it when the run's on and roads are closed and it'll be chaos, or you just move it to a really unappealing time. So you kind of can't win. unless you maybe move it to the Monday. I don't know if that's viable with international break. So it was a bit of a catch-22 situation, to be honest. It's an absolutely miserable kick-off time, and I expect the attendance is going to be really, really poor, not least because of last night's result and the general atmosphere around the club at the moment. But I think it's one of those games that we just need to get in, get the 3 points and get home. A 1-0, ball trundles in off Desser's backside is absolutely fine by me. Just get the points and let's get home, because that fixture, with everything surrounding it, the furore around the kick-off time and everything else, it's got banana skin written all over it for me. Especially, does St Johnstone have a manager yet? I don't know.
Yeah, they've just appointed one. That was going to be my next point, is that they have recently appointed their new manager, so they're probably going to be a bit difficult to know what to expect from him in terms of style of play and approach. So, as you say, it kind of does make this even more of a banana skin.
Yeah, I've just been reminded it's Simo Valacari. Of course it is. I'd forgotten about that. So, yeah, you've got a team coming in. Hopefully they'll be wanting new manager bounce, so they'll all be keen to impress a new manager. You don't really know how he's going to set up all this kind of stuff. Just gives me that horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. Yeah. But, let's try and be optimistic and say 1-0 off Desser's backside, get down the road, and just, we can reset hopefully over the international break. Because it's just going to be a bit of a difficult end to what's been an unpleasant week.
Yeah. Do you expect the manager to make many changes to the starting 11, either personnel or structural, tactical?
Can't say I expect structural changes, much as I would welcome it. I certainly think he needs to change his starting 11. Again, Casemiro should come in. Probably McCausland should come in. Egeman, Raskin, get these guys in. Personally, I would put Balogun in as well. I do not think the centre-halves are performing adequately at the moment. And I'd probably want... I'd probably quite like another youngster put in somewhere, whether it's Cole McKinnon or whoever it may be, Lovelace or whatever, just someone in to give us a wee bit of fresh legs, a wee bit of something new. With the greatest of respect, and I'm horribly tempting fate here, it's St Johnstone at Ibrox. It's a game we should be winning, and we just need to try and see a bit of change. I think if he turns up with the usual suspects in that starting 11 again, it'll just set the tone, and the crowd will be antsy and everything else. And the first time St Johnstone passed through us, which they will, the crowd will get in their backs, and you can just see it coming. So a bit of fresh legs in the starting 11, I think, is imperative for Sunday night. Not least because it will help us get the result, but also because it will show the fans that Clermont is alert to some of the issues that are blatantly obvious to everyone.
Yeah, I think as much as the team need to have a good performance, I actually think the manager needs to have a good performance on Sunday. Yeah. As much as, and again, it's, to be honest.
You hate to say it, right? And I'm not in the Clermont out train and all this kind of stuff, right? The board have said they're backing him, so we have to assume that's correct. But we've seen this in seasons gone by with Gio and Clermont.
Yeah.
Results just slowly, creepingly getting worse and worse. And then occasionally make some good result, and you're like, oh, is it turning the corner? And then it goes back, and they get worse, and they get worse. And then it just comes a point it's untenable. And I think Sunday night, it is a big game because we have to bounce back from it. And if we don't, and even if it is a horrible, stuttering performance that we win, and even if St Johnstone miss a penalty or, they dominate us and we still manage to win, you can see that creeping dread coming into the fan base where they just slowly lose faith. And I just worry that we're in that kind of phase at the moment, leading up, of course, to this game at Pittodrie at the end of the month. You can see it all coming together in a really horrible way that we've seen before. I hope I'm completely wrong and the team turns it around from here on in. But we just have to be alert to that movie that the fans have seen before in very, very recent times.
Yeah, that's my big fear around this always, that this feels all too much like a movie we've seen before, and we feel like we kind of know how this ends, and as much as we don't want it to end that way, because I think generally we all accept that Clermont's a good guy and he speaks well, and he did turn us around last season when he came in, but it just feels like we've seen this before, and we kind of know that we're heading towards the inevitable ending at some point.
It's one of my big issues at the moment. Clermont came in again, he did really well, and then the wheels came off. That's fine, it happens, right? We knew the squad was in a bit of a shambles. Over the summer, we've targeted players that we've not got. Quite a few players that we're very clearly were after didn't get them over the line. Then we've signed a few players, and then we've given Clermont this new contract and all this kind of stuff. And I just don't know what's gone on over the summer, if I'm honest. Because there's absolutely no rational reason to give Clement an extra year in his contract, none whatsoever. And I know the line was, well, we're committing to it, and that's a public show of our commitment. That makes no sense, right? There's no reason you give him an extra year. There's nothing Clement could achieve within 4 years that he couldn't achieve within the 3 he had left on his deal. And you've got to presume the new contract comes with a pay rise as well. So whatever leverage he brought or his agent brought to the table, the board have reacted by renewing his contract. And since that's happened, the squad's just kind of failed to improve, and he's failed to capitalise. And on the promising things we saw last season from the squad, we're not seeing from the squad this season. And I just wondered if there was a bit of a perfect storm there, that Clement maybe wasn't happy, and the board kind of tried to buy his approval back with a pay rise and a new contract, and then he's maybe not quite, or he doesn't think the squad is where he thought it would be. You know, he did say, this isn't the situation I expected when I was brought in, when he was talking about finance and things like that. So it just seems to me that there is that perfect storm brewing, where you can see that he's not happy with the squad he's been able to build, or the resources he's been given, and it's building up to something that's going to happen relatively soon. And again, I hope I'm wrong, because we have to put the club first. But again, we've seen it before, and we can hear the jungle drums in the background. So it's up to the players and to Philippe Clement to prove us all wrong and say that our trepidation is completely misplaced. And I hope that's how it goes. I hope we absolutely thump Aberdeen at Pittodrie, obviously. But we need to be alert as to the feelings of the fans at the moment, and make sure that we can push these results over the line, because we are now in that kind of horrible, is this the beginning of the end type phase. Again, happened with Gio, happened with Beale. Is it happening now at the same time of the season with Clement? I hope not, but let's see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens over the coming weeks. Before we finish up, Alan, have you got a score prediction for Sunday evening?
8-0 Rangers.
I'll take that. I'll absolutely take that.
Again, I'll take a scrappy 1-0. I think we will win on Sunday. You know, I think we'll have enough to do it. You know, we have been keeping clean sheets in the league, in fairness, and, you know, getting games off the line. So I think we'll have enough to do it. I don't expect it to be pretty, but that really doesn't matter at this stage. You know, 3 points and up the road, I'll take a 1-0 or a 2-0. I'll say it'll be 2-0 on Sunday. What about you?
I'll go 3-0.
Confident, I like it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Zach Lovelace to score?
I would love that, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Right, I think we'll call it time there. All that's left for me to do is thank my guest, Alan. Thanks for joining.
Cheers, Brian. See you again soon.
Cheers. As always, it's been live tonight. The show will be available on all podcasting platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher. There'll be a bit of a change to the schedule for the flagship show this week. We'll be back on Monday evening to review the action from Sunday's match. It'll be Craig and Ross with potentially another guest on at 9:30. So please join us for that one as well. Until next time, bye for now.